Hi, I'm Mwenyewe Dawan, Assistant Superintendent in the Wissahickon School District. I created this podcast, Leading with Dignity, Casual Conversations with Dr. Dawan, to help everyone to get to know our leaders better and all the wonderful work that they do. I'd like to highlight not just the incredible work that they do, but also have them share their passions, their personality, and some of their stories so that you can get to know them better. I hope you'll enjoy this series, and please do give us feedback. Thank you. I'm so excited to have with me our first guest, Ms. Keziah La Torre, our Director of Equity and Cultural Responsiveness, who leads many efforts across our district and is engaged in the work with many of our leaders, many of our family groups, many of our student groups. Her work, your work, really transcends through all stakeholders. And so I'm so grateful that you accepted the invitation to be our first guest on this podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. So you know that we have a few parts to this podcast. The first part is when we'll have like in our meetings, we do connection before content. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like that. Mm-hmm. So I'll ask you a couple of lighthearted questions, and then we'll take a deeper dive into what you do. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, you get to turn the tables and ask me some questions.
Nice. Very nice.
So we'll start with a lighthearted question, and you get to choose.
Okay.
Share with us, what is your favorite season and why? Or you could choose to tell us about someone in life whom you admire deeply.
Ooh, good question. My favorite season is summer, and I love that time because it provides an opportunity to be with family and friends through our summer cookouts or our block parties or what have you, and also traveling to the beach, like just being in the sand. So I love those precious times in the summer.
I love that. So you have some fun summer traditions with families.
Yes.
And the slower pace of our work. We work all summer long, but there is a little bit of a slower pace. So I'm glad that you're able to have some traditions and time with family. I agree. I love that time. You get to build some fun summer memories, which is really, really special. All right, next question. What's your all-time favorite movie, book, or perhaps play? Or what is your dream vacation destination?
Well, I'm going to go with favorite book / movie.
Okay.
Since I'm a former English teacher and literature film teacher. So it would be for me, I love films incredibly, like just all films. But Lord of the Rings, by far, would be one of my favorites. And I love Lord of the Rings because of the hero's journey, because of also the collaboration with everyone. The journey in itself is wonderful, but the collaborative efforts of the entire group to make it to the goal that they're trying to accomplish is something that I love. And it's a humanizing story, so it's very beautiful.
Wow, I've never heard of anyone speak about the Lord of the Rings in this way. My mind first went to Precious. Is that the movie, right?
Yes, Smeagol, Gollum. Yes.
I love that.
It is. And it's nice because you get to talk about all that good stuff in terms of duality of a character, right? That duality piece. So I love that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
I love the series. I have read the books as well. So I've watched the movie and the books, and I do. It's up there. It's up in the top 10 for me, I would say.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
Good choice.
Well, let's dig into what your work is like. As the Director of Equity and Cultural Responsiveness, it's a pretty lofty title, right? There's a lot of work that you do, and I know I'm close with you in terms of knowing what your work is, but talk to us about what is a typical day like for you, the day in the life of Ms. La Torre.
Awesome. I would start with a word, collaboration. I think that in all the work that I'm doing, the day work entails collaboration, whether I'm collaborating with teachers, administrators, families, community members. It is about collaboration because the work that we're doing is so essential and it requires everyone. And so I look forward to that on a daily basis. And that can be something where I'm working with our district PBIS core teams, whether I'm working on interviews or working on data, working on federal programs, working on social emotional learning, focusing on the work that we do in the classroom when we're looking at culturally responsive teaching. So anything that we're focusing on in terms of the collaborative piece, I look forward to that and supporting it as best I can. Something I'm thinking of today is restorative practices, working at the building level with it as well as at the district level. So typically a day of my life would be about collaborating. Am I collaborating with community members in the mentorship program at the secondary level? Am I collaborating with our PBS core teams and so forth? So that collaboration piece is essential throughout the day.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And, I heard you say it's everyone's work. And I think that's so key. And that is something that we have really sort of underscored in our district, that you are the director of Equity and Cultural Responsiveness, but this work is not just your work, it's everyone's work, every single one of us. In any role that we have and every way that we serve, it's all of our work. And you constantly reiterate that, and yet you provide such incredible support and guidance and leadership in what you do. And you're everywhere. Like I see you buzzing in and out of this building, in and out of meetings, in and out of conversations, meeting with students, meeting with parents and caregivers, meeting with administrators, meeting with staff, faculty, support staff. Like you are everywhere, meeting with everyone. And sometimes I tap in and I'm like, okay, did you eat today? To make sure taking care of yourself is important too.
Yes, so very true.
Yeah, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
And what led you to or inspired you to pursue this role?
Wonderful question. Again, as an educator, I would go back. So while in second grade, I knew I wanted to become a teacher. And the hallmark of wanting to become a teacher was because I wanted to provide opportunities for my classmates to experience things that they loved and for them to achieve their goals. And so sitting in second grade and looking at my wonderful teachers that I had, I knew I wanted to become a teacher. And so I was a teacher for 24 years and then decided to become an administrator. And the same impetus for that was I wanted to do more for my colleagues, for students, for families. And I thought that in that level, in that position as an assistant principal, I could surely do that. And then this role became something that was known to me through colleagues first. My husband also encouraged me to do this. And he said, you're always aspiring to want to help more. There's a position I heard about in Wissahickon School District. And I read it and I said, this is what I do. At Radnor, this is the role that I'm doing currently as an assistant principal. In my current role, also serving as a DEI officer. So I looked at that and I said, I would be able to serve a greater group. So in service to all, I wanted to ensure that I could do that. And I applied for the position and here I am.
We are so lucky. So your husband was the one that discovered the opening?
My husband, yes, my husband. Yes, I have to give him credit.
We have to give your husband credit, yes.
Because
we're so fortunate to have you on the team. And thank goodness to your husband for finding the position.
Yes.
That's awesome. It's funny how things work out in that way, right? Yeah.
I agree.
So as you look ahead, this is a spring of the 23-24 school year.
Yes.
A lot has happened already this year. Maybe there's something you want to share to highlight, or maybe there's something coming up as we look ahead that you want to share, maybe a current project you're working on.
So I'm happy that we are actually culminating with our restorative practice internal training for this school year. Yes. We've had elementary and secondary training. It was successful. We have a secondary training coming up tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to our community conversation on restorative practices that's coming up. That's going to be delightful. Part of our community conversations is to provide transparency and communication, but also learning opportunities. So the way it's structured is to be intentional in providing, communication that's clear, but also learning that's dear, right? So we are learning this in the school, right, as teachers and students. So what are we doing in terms of letting our parents and guardians know, what is it that we're doing? What is this restorative practice about? So I love the opportunity to share what is happening and involve our caregivers in the work that we're currently doing. As I look forward, I am looking forward to the implementation of the 24-25 PBIS. So that's our kickoff year, and our core teams have worked so hard. Their diligence and collaboration has been outstanding. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in action for next year.
It truly has. Oh my goodness. So can you tell us a little bit more? I'm going to dig into that. When you say PBIS, let's talk about what that means. Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes.
That is some really exciting work that's happening.
Yes. So our Positive behavior intervention and supports, again, our PBIS is a part of our MTSS framework that in our district. And so as we look at PBIS, we're looking carefully and closely at how we are tiering our interventions and supports for our students and our staff when we're focusing on behavior specifically. And so it is within that gamut that we've been able to look at our code of student conduct, look very closely at our teacher and managed responses, as well as our office managed responses to student behavior that naturally occurs in education, that naturally occurs as students are learning. And so it's just a delightful way for us to approach building culture, building climate, building community, and it's a part of our vision and mission as a district. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what this is going to shape into as a livable source of how we continue to build community for our students and our staff.
Thank you for that. So when you talk about MTSS, that's the multi-tiered systems of support.
Yes.
So we're looking at the core expectations specific to behavior, core expectations, our culture, our climate, as you referenced, and then those interventions, some of which are interventions teachers can facilitate right in the classroom. So when there are minor infractions versus the more significant infractions that might occur where it's a behavior that the administrator might have to address, etc.
Yes, it's that difference between what is a teacher managed behavior, what is an office managed behavior, what does that look like? And what I like about it, it does offer a menu of options and possibilities for staff to engage in. What's so important too about it is if you have someone coming in that's new, they understand clearly that this is a part of our norm in terms of how we respond to student behavior. Here is my role as a classroom teacher, and I'm empowered to respond this way before it escalates to something where I'm going to say, well, this is an office managed behavior that I need to then send to the office. It's more of a, what is in the locus of your control, right? So focus on your locus. And so providing really clear and transparent interventions like steps and actions that can be taken across district is so essential because you're building upon and you're, more importantly, not just responding to a behavior, but you're teaching behavior, right? Behavior norms. And I think that's so important. So it's our belief in the fact that we can change the behavior that we're seeing that could be disruptive in class by showing the student how to, right? So very much emphasis on the teaching aspect of it, which is important.
That's right. And the PBIS has such a natural sort of intersection with restorative practices. And you referenced a little bit ago the work that you're proud of with the internal restorative practices trainings that we've had, which you and Mr. Mandel have done incredible work with. And I know that there's so much continued positive feedback about that training so that all of our staff can eventually be trained up with restorative practices. And so the intersectionality, if you will, of PBIS and restorative practices is so pivotal, really, because with restorative practices, we're talking at the base of which is building relationships. And so that goes perfectly with thinking about expectations, right? You want to speak a little bit to that?
Sure. You know, when we're looking at restorative practices and the interrelationship with PBIS, it is first and foremost about the 80%, which is building community. And so it's helping our students to understand the expectations, the norms, the connection before we dive into the content. And part of that too is also ensuring that with restorative practice and PBIS, there is the capacity of students to engage in the questions that we pose to them, and the questions that we ask are questions that provide them with an opportunity to reflect on the behavior. Like it's not accusatory, like, what did you do now? But what happened, right? And it allows the students to really articulate what did happen. What do you think needs to happen to make this right? What do we need to do next? So those types of questions are very important because if you want to change a behavior, you want students to own the fact, one, acknowledge that it was behavior that caused some type of harm, right? Or the behavior in itself is something that I need to be accountable for. So it's the acknowledgement and accountability in terms of that. And so we also look at the intersection of social and emotional learning because we want students to be able to reflect. We want them to have the capacity for perspective taking. We want them to have the capacity to be empathetic. So all those things come into play. So when I speak to social emotional learning or restorative practice and PBIS, they're all intersectional and they're all doing the same thing in the sense that we're trying to empower our students to be able to make decisions that are appropriate decisions or the right decisions. And when they make a mistake, right, how they can make it right and move forward. And so those things are very important and impactful as we, explore that. So for the 24-25 school year, we're looking forward to that work. It's all coming together.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to lift up is when we talk about social emotional learning, restorative practices, even PBIS, we centered this conversation on our students. But the reality is these are elements that we apply to our own experiences too, right?
Yes.
As adults, we think about building relationships. We think about if there's a misstep or miscommunication or I've caused harm in some way, how am I acknowledging, how am I owning that? How am I looking to repair the harm with my colleague, right? How am I developing my own self-awareness of how I might be perceived by others based on words that I've used or delaying a response to something. So sort of our own social awareness and decision-making skills, like all of those elements of SEL, right,
Yes.
apply to us as adult learners too.
Absolutely. And I love that, our focus has always been on ensuring that our staff has the capacity and also that their social emotional wellness is prioritized too, because then we're going to see that reflected in our students as well.
It's right. Absolutely. It's all connected. If I don't have that awareness, if I don't have those skills for myself as an adult learner, as an adult educator, then how can I help my students? So it's so thoughtful, the approach that we've taken here on this. So thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thinking about you in terms of your position, what led you to this position that you're currently in?
Assistant Superintendent.
Yes, talk about it.
Okay, thank you for the question. I guess I could go back to perhaps when I was 7. You were back to second grade. I'm going to go back to second grade. I think I was 7, actually. I think it was maybe in 3rd grade. I had a friend in the neighborhood who had some struggles in her school. So we did not attend the same school, but I remember she would come home and talk about things that she was frustrated by with her school. Now, what were the kinds of things a 7-year-old is frustrated by? Not big deal kinds of things, but big deals in her world. And I remember asking my mother, how can we help her? And she talks about, I was even at that time wanting to fix things, make things better. But I asked her, who is in charge? Okay, what we have to help fix this, problem. And, I knew the role of a principal. I said, we should write a letter to her principal. And I don't remember what the problems were that she was facing, but I remember my mother saying that issue was not one that the principal really could address. And I said, well, who is in charge of the principals? Because we have to figure out how to solve this problem.
Yes.
And she sort of went through thinking about the various organizational structures in a school district system. And then I kept asking, well, who's the boss of that person? And who's the boss of that person? And she said, well, the superintendent is the boss of all the bosses. I said, well, that's who we need to write to fix this problem. So I think since I was a child, I've always wanted to help support systems in school districts.
Yes.
And in my career, I have served in the role of a classroom teacher and the role of an instructional support teacher, which was a position to create systems around multi-tier systems of support, delivering interventions, but also coaching other teachers. I've also served in the role of supervisor of special education, student services, not special education, supervisor of student services, was partnered with the supervisor of special education, and continued to do work at the district level around building systems for multi-tier systems of support. And in each of those roles, I enjoyed the work of supporting our systems to ensure our students have what they need. That's at the end of the day what we want, right? To support students and teachers in the work that they're doing. And then I also served in the role of DEI leader for the district in my former district, in addition to school principal. And so when this position opened up in Wissahickon, I actually, like you, someone else brought it to my attention. I actually wasn't looking for a shift in my role at the time, though I knew one day I would want to serve in this role. And I was contacted by, and then someone else reached out and I said, oh yeah, you should apply. That's a great district. You should check it out. And my colleague was like, no, not for me, for you. You should check it out. And I said, oh, yeah, I should. And so, several people reached out and said, you'd be perfect for this. And I said, well, I know about the district. I know it's an excellent district and I know the work that they're doing. And I knew that sort of the values were aligned with my values, thinking about the work that the board was doing here and the existing leadership team at that time was doing. And so I applied and went through the process and was very fortunate to land here. So it was an incredible shift in my role, leaving during the pandemic, a district and joining a new district. But I'm so grateful because this has been an incredible opportunity to continue to do such good work with people like you, leaders like you, to support our students and our staff and our school leadership teams to continue to do great work. So, yeah, I think from 7, wanting to help make things better. So that's what drives me.
The vision of a 7-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for the question. Anything else for now?
No, I'm good. Anything from...
Not for now, but I do hope you'll come back another time.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
It was such a pleasure to have you join, and thank you for sharing about personal things, but also sharing a little bit about your role and what you do, and the impact that you make on our district community is significant every day, and so we thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to this, and this is such a wonderful opportunity that you're providing to the district, and also the community, so they can get to know us.
Yeah.
So great job. Thank you.
Thank you. As we wrap up, I want to encourage everyone to keep leading with dignity. And remember, everyone's story matters. Until next time, let's stay involved, let's stay inspired, let's stay connected, and let's stay curious. Thanks for joining me today on Leading with Dignity, Casual Conversations with Dr. Dawan to help us celebrate our leaders.